Today's case is about two sisters who vanished under mysterious circumstances, to be later found lifeless in a neighbouring county. Today's episode may have information, but what we really want to know is, what happened to the Grimes sisters? We don't have a lot of backstory for today's victims, and given how young they were, this kind of makes sense. So other than knowing that they were inseparable, that Barbara attended the Thomas Kelly High School and Patricia the St. Maurice Catholic School, and that they were massive Elvis Presley fans, I don't really know anything else about their upbringing. So let's jump right in.
Oh, right, John. Little Presley fans, eh? Yeah,
Yes.
that's a dark web, that one.
Is he alive? Is he not alive? We don't know.
Oh no, I was talking about more of the child bride.
Today, as the title probably would have alluded you to, we are talking about the Grimes sisters. And that would be one Barbara Grimes, born on the 5th of May 1941, and Patricia Grimes, born December 31st, 1943.
Babs and Patty.
Babs and Patty. I was literally going to write that, but I was like, they're kind of dead.
Yeah.
They were 2 out of 7, but I don't have all of their siblings' names.
Yeah.
So you'll learn about 2 of them later,
Mm-hmm.
but that's kind of it.
7. Lose track.
Their father's name was Joseph Cornelius Grimes, and their mother was Loretta Marcella Hayes.
Marcella.
Marcella. Kind of nice.
Oh.
I don't really know anything about any of them, or even if they're good parents. So that part of the story kind of ends there.
Yeah.
One suspicious death is bad enough, but 12 and 15-year-old sisters is particularly bad, and I cannot begin to imagine what that would be like as a parent.
That's so young.
It's
12 and 15.
Too young. So the date in question was December 28, 1956. And the girls had planned to go and see the movie Love Me Tender. Do you know who the lead was for that? Elvis Presley.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they would have been fanging for it. But that's my man.
It's old Elvis.
That's my man. I'm going to go watch my man on the big screen. And I mean, that's kind of normal. So they wanted to go and see the movie for the 11th time.
11th.
11th. 10 plus 1. 11.
But I mean, that's any Elvis fan, right? They used to go crazy.
Oh, yeah. Do you remember hearing about, like, when he started moving his hips, one of the girls in the audience fainted?
I know.
Slut. You get your mind. We know what she was thinking about. She was she was overcome.
Oh.
Now, the movie didn't start until, like, quite late, so they didn't end up leaving the house till about 7:30 p.m., which I think is really late.
That's really late for 12 and 15.
Yeah, and to go unchaperoned. And they promised their mum, though. They said, Loretta. Well, they didn't say Loretta. Mummy, we promised we'll be home by midnight. And Mum said, well, as long as you promise to be home by midnight, go have fun, girls.
Yeah. That would have just been
Never on your life would I ever do that. Ever. Ever.
Ever.
Children.
Yeah. I was going to say it was a bit different back then, but
No.
still.
I don't accept that.
Yeah.
That's garbage. There's no confirmation if they walked or if they caught the bus. If they walked, it would have been about 27 minutes.
I was just about to ask how far away it is. That's
knew
a
you were.
long walk for
Kids.
at night time.
Yeah, because they lived in McKinley Park and the movie theatre was like 2.4 kilometres away. For our listeners that are inside the US, that's 1.5 miles. Speaking of listeners in the US, we would just like to say thank you for the sheer amount of listeners that we have over there. There are too many locations to list, so you know where you're listening from, and we love you for it. So if you are listening today, wherever you are in the world, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Whichever platform you are listening on, you are amazing, and we appreciate you.
So if you do listen,
Thanks.
thank you.
Back to the case. So I'm constantly amused by the price of things back in the day. Specifically in regards to this, I understand obviously inflation and all that kind of shit, but for example, it's presumed that the girls had $2.50 with them. That's all they took. I don't know what that would get you today. Maybe an apple. You could get an apple, $2.50, maybe.
I was like, you wouldn't even be able to get a chocolate unless it was
they're
on sale. Yeah.
Those are the ones I look for.
Yeah,
I'm
dollar
not
chocky.
spending. Yeah, if it's $1, maybe I'll get a $1 chomp
Yeah.
or a curly whirly.
You can't get anything really for $2.
You can't. It's actually genuinely ridiculous.
Hmm.
And Babs, I'm guessing because she was the older one, she was 15. She was in charge of the money, and she was even instructed to put 50 cents away to save in case they wanted to watch the second screening that same evening of Love Me Tender. And then I had to look into that because it's like 50 cents. That means the movie tickets are 25 cents each.
That's crazy.
So then I had to look up ticket pricing for movies back in the 1950s, and I can confirm in Illinois, in Chicago, they were 25 cents at the time.
Wild. But also, second screening, it's already 7:30. That's gonna be late.
Well, they left at 7:30. That's not when the movie started.
Jeez Louise.
So we know that they make it to the cinema because a school friend, Dorothy Wynett, sat a row back from with her younger sister, so she saw them. And then also during the intermission, which I think may have been when Dorothy was taking her sister home, she saw the two sisters queuing for popcorn, and they seemed happy and they seemed in high spirits and normal and stuff.
Yeah.
So there were 2 sightings at that time confirming that they were definitely at the cinema.
There. Yeah. Okay.
And surprise, they end up waiting and staying for the second screening, which means it's the 12th time they've seen that 2 times in one day. Might I add, this movie only released in November of like 1956.
Oh.
It's December 28th, and they've seen it, 11 times, going on 12 times.
Got a lot of time on your hands. But I guess Elvis, so.
Or they go to school during the day, they go to the movies at night.
Go see the hubby. He was hot at the start, but yes, Elvis would do. Johnny Cash would do.
Maybe not Johnny Cash for me. Sean Connery, I would have sat on.
Oh, Sean Connery, even up until the end.
Until he died.
Yeah.
So they end up staying for the second screening, which was to actually end in time. And if they were to catch the bus, they would have been home by, I believe, 11:45. So they would have made it in time just for the curfew. I think they would have planned it out too. They're like, if we go there, we see this one. There's another film starting after that. We would be able to make it home by midnight if we watched it.
At least they planned it out, but too late.
I can't imagine seeing a movie that many times in such short succession. I don't think that I've done that before.
I've seen movies numerous times, but not in that close.
Honey, Chicago. I've watched that. I watched Chicago until the DVD warped. I watched the shit out of that film.
I think it's on Netflix.
I love it. I have it literally lasered into my head. So it's fine. I've seen it too. I've literally seen it
I've got it
too
playing
much.
right now.
Yep. So Barbara and Patricia should have been home by 11:45, but the time passed, and then so did midnight. So Loretta asked her eldest daughter Teresa, who was 17, and her son, maybe her only son, I'm not sure, his name was Joey, who was 14, to go and wait by the bus for them, because she just thought that maybe they're running late, I'll send them out there and they can just wait for them. But then I also said, listen, Loretta, if 2 of my children were kind of, missing, I wouldn't send another 2 out there, you know? What were you thinking?
What are you doing?
What are you thinking?
All right, you two, go find the other 2. If you don't come back, I'll send you and you out, and then,
Yeah.
What?
Well, I guess that's 4. She's got 3 left, so only
Alright.
Anyway, they ended up waiting. 3 buses would drive past. That's how long they waited outside before they came back. In the meantime, while she was waiting for them to return, she called. Imagine this. It's like freaking midnight. But while she's waiting for them to come back, she called the girls' friends' houses to be like, are they there at your house? It is like it's like after midnight. Who is answering the phone at that time? And I would not have been polite in saying that. If I were the parent, I probably would break down those doors to find my kids. But I still don't know how they didn't say that there was backlash. Mind you, they also didn't say that anyone picked up either. So who knows what actually happened at that time. And when she saw Teresa and Joey turn up to the house without their sisters in tow, it was then that she actually called the Chicago Police Department and filed a missing persons report. By this time, I believe it was around 2:15 in the morning.
Far out. I was going to say she didn't send her kids down to the cop shop to report.
She called them.
Oh, yeah. Good girl. That would be terrifying.
Unless she didn't want to be a parent anymore.
Yeah. I mean, the way she's going, just sending them out willy-nilly.
This caused one of the biggest missing persons cases in Cook County ever.
Ooh.
and obvi, a massive search party would end up ensuing like the next day.
I wonder if that would have been around milk carton times.
I think this was before Amber Alerts and milk carton times. I don't think at that time they had milk cartons, they had bottles.
Oh, that's right, in the 50s. Oh, you just take for granted, hey, how easily things are now with technology. Back then, trying to find.
This whole search party thing ensued, and it was throughout the entire city. The police participated in droves. There were hundreds of them looking for the girls. In fact, leaving not a single stone unturned. Police from like neighboring counties and neighboring departments would also come in to help, which I think is great because normally police do not act quick enough in these stories. I'm not even sorry to say it. Well,
that's really awesome because in the US they don't normally say the fact that everyone good job. It's good to hear they've done the job properly.
That's for once.
Not waiting the 24-hour or 48 hours, whatever it is.
72 hours. And all of this led to a task force being created. And the sole purpose of that was to find the Grimes sisters.
Good.
And I believe all of this, it's still like the 29th. So they went missing on the 28th. So it's the following day still.
Yeah. Wow.
And at this point, even volunteers were rolling up their sleeves and got to work trying to find the girls. So they went literally door to door. They dredged through canals and waterways in the area. 15,000 flyers were released. Like everything was happening. The local parish decided that they were going to offer a $1,000 reward for anyone who might know of her whereabouts and give like accurate leads as to get in there. Like everyone got involved.
That's so good. And so quickly.
So good. Exactly. That's exactly what I think as well. So an investigation is completely underway, and eventually they question more than 300,000 people.
Holy.
300,000. 2,000 of those were scrutinized as potential suspects. I'm telling you now, Mary, it's not going to be all 2,000 of them. That's some ring.
That's a lot. You need to start putting that down.
And
Whittling
they
that
did.
down.
They whittled it from 300,000 to 2,000 to 2 people in particular that ended up getting arrested for the crime after making a confession. But it all fell apart because it was the result of coercion. They were under duress. One of them signed a freaking 19-page dossier agreeing to the things that they allegedly had done. So through questioning, which included talking to other people that attended the cinema that evening, they spoke to several youngins who saw the sisters. And get this, they would advise the investigators that they saw them speaking to and getting into the car with someone who looked like Elvis Presley.
No. What a way, though, to lure someone in, hey?
To look like...
Yeah, to try and...
That's very specific, though. I'm going to go to a screening of a movie of a guy that I look like. I'm going to wait outside in the car and I'm going to invite them in.
I don't like this.
You are not alone. Anyway, the car was something Mercury model something or other. Who. Brum brum. I don't know what it was. I looked it up, looked old. That's all I can tell you.
Was it a long boy?
Nah.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't like a Chevrolet. See, I'm starting to learn some cars.
There you go.
It wasn't built like that. It was a little bit more squat than a Chevy.
Okay.
But I mean, I would own one.
Yeah.
I like the retro look, like the old school look, but this was not that.
I like
Or like
that
a
there's some witnesses. So far, so good. Getting
No.
some... Okay. No.
You say that, darling.
I'm
but-
like, the cops are working together. We've got a bit of a description.
Yeah.
Bring me home.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, there are many endless reports of sightings that evening, but everything was word of mouth. There was no hard evidence. And even though the case was the talk of the town, and they were literally on the front page of every single newspaper, the investigators didn't actually believe that the girls were abducted.
Shush your face. You shush your face.
My face has been shushed.
But they were doing such a good job. You're lying. Stop lying.
That's what they believed. Instead, they believed that the girls had either run away from home because they weren't happy there, or that they were hiding at their boyfriends' houses, these boyfriends who did not actually exist, by the way. At least that's how they felt up until roughly about a week had passed. And they're like, oh, maybe they have been abducted.
So they put together a task force just to be like, just run away.
Apparently it was strange that they did that. Apparently it was a little bit weird.
Aye.
But they did. And as you can imagine, the family would have been absolutely fuming.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous.
Fuming. Well, what can you do? I believe that Loretta was disputing that the whole time. She was like, they wouldn't run away. They have been taken.
How do you know, Loretta? Which kid is it, Loretta? You want to send all your kids out, Loretta? Don't blame the mum. But at least she's pushing for it.
And she was pushing back to be like, that is not the case. I want my daughters to come home. Anyway, what made it worse were the false sightings that people were also reporting. And they said that they saw the girls right up until the 9th of January. Right up until the 9th.
I do not understand what type of person can do false reports.
Well, here's the issue. In the overall picture, I believe that the reports were false. So what I believe is that they believe that that's what they saw.
Okay, so not being malicious.
I don't think they're maliciously giving these sightings, to do anything bad.
I'll let it slide.
This one time.
Yay.
And apparently they are visiting different establishments. And this, of course, made the investigators think that their original theory, that the girls had just run away because they didn't want to be at home, was the correct one, even though it wasn't. But there were stories of them waiting outside bars and convincing men to bring drinks out to them. A 15 and a 12-year-old. So it doesn't make sense that would have happened. And it makes even less sense like when you find out like a little bit later too. Anyway, a theory was formed that the girls were so obsessed with Elvis, right, that they had traveled to Nashville to see him in concert, in person, with the no money that they would have had to get in. Because they left with $2.50 that day. Well, that's not what they would have come home with. They would have spent it all because the last of it would have been spent on popcorn and snacks at the movies.
Also, if they're that obsessed with Elvis, I doubt they'd be going dressed in something that they've worn to the cinemas to then travel in and not have a change of clothes to look your best for Mr. Presley. Like, no.
I mean, to be fair, though, there are some grubs. You've seen some grubs that really love, like, people, and they don't give a shit about what they look like.
Yeah,
I just want to see him.
I love him.
Elvis Presley, you'll be my husband. I'm 12. Another theory was that they were trying to recreate their version of Elvis's lifestyle in some way, shape, or form. I don't understand because I don't really know a lot about Elvis. I know that my oldest sister, Rose, loved Elvis. She had his vinyls and stuff. Again, Loretta came through and she was like, no, that is not what they're doing. They didn't go to Nashville to go and see him, at least not on their own accord. They aren't trying to recreate some fantasy of trying to be Elvis. And then she released a statement saying, if someone is holding them, please let the girls call me. I'll forgive them from the bottom of my heart. The forgive them part, I don't know if she's referring to the girls or the captors.
Sam. Yeah. Good on her for going to the media, though. That's like always the next step.
You kind of have to. If the cops don't help you, got to go somewhere, and then you can get it picked up and it gets national coverage. Anyway, apparently, the news actually made its way all the way to Nashville, and on the 19th of January 1957, a statement was released from Graceland. Yeah. It wasn't released specifically by Elvis, but from that property.
Yeah.
And it was literally it was kind of gross, to be honest, but it was like something about good girls, be a good girl, you always tell your parents where you are, always make sure you go home after seeing my show, like something like that. And then he would actually end up making a statement on a radio station himself. Imagine Elvis Presley, like at the time.
Yeah.
Like making a personalized message for you. And I think that he was also under the assumption that they had just run away.
Yeah.
Because he was like, be good girls, go home to your mom.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're dead, so it's not like that was going to happen. Elvis.
That is wild, though, for him to, especially back then.
Well, it would have made its way to him because they're at his show and they're a big fan, so it would have made
and then pressure
sense
on
to get to him, I guess.
Why aren't you speaking up about it?
Well, yeah, like you're forced into having to say something, and you can't like Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky that shit.
No, you cannot.
Not that he had sexual relations with those women, because they were children. Anyway.
I did not have sexual relations.
With that woman. A construction worker. You know it's always good when you start with the title of someone else. A construction worker would make a rather grisly discovery on the 22nd of January that same year, so in 57. He noticed what he would report as these flesh-coloured things behind a guardrail as he was driving along a rural county road named German Church Road, just 200 yards east of the county line. And he may have recognized them as flesh-coloured, but he just thought they were mannequins. But even saying that, it didn't sit well with him. So he went home and he spoke to his wife, and he told her about it. And she was like, man up, we're going to go and see it. So they go together.
I like that the woman's like, all right, show me where it is.
Well, you say that. She gets there and cops an eyeful and faints.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because of what she actually sees.
Yeah, it's never a mannequin.
Like, but no one else saw it? That's weird, Mr. Truck Driver. That's weird. What they were looking at were the frozen and naked bodies of Barbara and Patricia Grimes. When the wife came to and they were able to get to a phone, they ended up calling the Willow Springs Police Department, who obviously made their way down there and probably would have informed the correct county as well that they had, located the girls. The bodies lay upon a flat horizontal section of snow-covered ground. It was directly behind the guardrail, and it extended out just before an incline of like an embankment that led into the Devil's Creek, which sounds creepy too when you have the devil's name and things. Even though I don't believe in the devil, Barbara lay on her left side and her legs were drawn slightly up toward her torso, and Patricia lay on her back with her body covering her sister's head, and I believe her head was angled like sharply to the right. Silence.
I don't like that.
No one does. There were 3 wounds which resembled, I believe, holes that looked like they would have been from a pickaxe.
Oh my gosh.
And that was like on Barbara's chest, and there are other injuries like blunt force trauma that were visible upon her face and her head. There were also like numerous injuries resembling bruises that were on Patricia's face and body, and there was not an item of clothing belonging to either of them near or in fact ever located.
Oh gosh. So completely naked.
Starkers. Absolutely starkers.
Far out.
I know.
Just babies.
Just little babies. And their dad was actually driven to the crime scene to identify the bodies.
Far out. How horrific.
As a mother, do you think you could do that?
I don't know. You'd kind of want some closure, but you also wouldn't want that
scarred,
ingrained in your head for the rest of your life.
Because you'd see that every time you close your eyes.
Yeah.
Because even as a sibling, I was thinking about that when I was researching this case. Even as a sibling, I don't think I could. Like, if there was no one else in the world that could identify the person, I was the only one to put closure to that, then I would have to. But if I didn't have to, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't think I could.
I've seen one dead body, kind of 2, but one through a photograph of a relative. I don't think I could ever do it again. No. You think you'd get closure, but then you see them and it's just...
not the same. It's a husk.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. Far out. That'd be so horrific. That poor dad.
Well, I couldn't, like I said, I just couldn't. So anyway, Joseph got down there and they were positively identified, and a crime scene was swiftly underway. 160 officers from various departments and locations all got involved, and while they may have had their bodies, there was little to no real evidence that could be gathered.
Too little too late, my friends.
Too little too late. One little whoopsie they made was allowing untrained staff and civilians to help out with the investigation, as likely what happened was they inadvertently maybe covered tracks or trampled evidence or touched evidence. They'll never know because they literally found no evidence other than the two bodies, but it was a mistake that I think that they learned from because they negatively impacted the crime scene.
I take back everything I said at the start about these coppers being on the ball.
Good job, you're on the ball.
No.
Not on the ball.
We've got about 150 officers. What's your name? Yeah, come in. You don't know what you're looking for, but just have a little nosy around.
Just take a look.
That's so dumb.
Yeah.
But also low-key, I would like to be a part of that.
To a degree. If the bodies are gone and I get to look through other stuff, okay.
Yeah.
I think I could manage
Let me
that.
help me
But
find.
If there's skin, scalp, blood, guts, gore, no.
Brain pieces? No.
I'll leave that for you because I'm not doing it. Autopsies were instructed to take place the next day, and there were 3 very experienced forensic pathologists that were put to task.
Good. Maybe not good.
No, you can say good, girl, but the answers will change that. And they would spend 10 whole hours doing an autopsy on the girls. 5 on each body. 5 hours.
Part of me says, okay, they're thoroughly looking, but your face says otherwise.
Look, I believe they were looking, but I don't know if they knew what they were looking at.
Oh my gosh, no.
Is maybe the problem, because after all that time, they were unable to pinpoint an exact date of death, which is understandable kind of considering because the bodies were frozen, so it makes things a little bit trickier. The same goes for the cause of death. They just didn't really know. Now your face says something. The closest they got to a time frame was by examining the contents of their stomach, which revealed snacks that had been eaten the night that they went missing, which meant that the window would have been within 5 hours of the last sighting of the girls.
Far out. I always find that so wild when they look at stomach
Wild.
contents.
Yeah, because it hadn't really digested, so it was still sitting in their stomach. There were no visible fatal wounds and no drugs, alcohol poisons, or toxins found in their bodies.
What, the pickaxe? It was just little stabs?
Speaking of their bodies, they were reported as remarkably clean, but they said that Barbara had most likely engaged in sexual activity shortly before death. Barbara's 15. That's too young, but they don't know if it was consensual or not, but apparently there was no sign of force used. I'm guessing there was no... It's the 50s, they kind of want to spare you from that at the time. Great. But if only they used their little heads and considered the circumstances around their death. Like, what do you think likely would have happened in that? Do you think it would have been consensual? They were kidnapped, found naked with wounds to the body. One of them, so these 3 numpties said, had signs of sexual abuse. But they're like, well, we don't know if it was actually abuse or if it was consensual.
I guess a little part of me, even though I don't believe it at all, there's that little part is if she thought it was Elvis. You know what I mean?
And she went, okay, Elvis.
Yeah, but like, what was the conversation had? Or was there drugs involved? And then that's why there's no... Yeah.
No toxins, no drugs, no alcohol, no nothing. The cause of death was ruled secondary shock and exposure. And I pulled that same face when I read it too, because I was like, they died of shock? What are you talking about? But as I mentioned earlier, there were wounds to the girls' bodies, right? According to these 3 tits, they were caused by just rodents. You know, the bodies have been lying out there, rodents come and have a little nibble. La-di-da.
In the shape of pickaxe marks. Perfectly
Not the
holds.
pickaxe marks.
Oh, fucking...
So the pickaxe marks, they're like, well, yeah, those happened after death. So we don't really need to look into those any further, but the damage to the girls' heads and that kind of stuff, that was just rodents. Big, hungry rodents.
I don't like these people.
No. Apparently the secondary shock, that resulted from the exposure to low temperatures. So it reduced the girl's body temperature below critical levels. So I think that's also a way for people back in 1957 to say, I don't know, mate. I need to put something on the thing. There's nothing that I can think of, so I'm just going to put this. And I think this is really dumb. Like, sure, I'm not a forensic pathologist or a coroner, but come on.
Yeah. Get good.
Get better. Better, then get good, but get better at whatever the hell you're doing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they believe that the bodies have been placed there days earlier and that the snow and low temperature preserved the bodies, etc. But one of them theorized that they had actually been laying in that same spot for around 3 weeks. But that was the theory that one of them had. The other two didn't necessarily agree. I know. And even though the report said what it said, the Cook County coroner, Harry Gloss, he was like, I don't think so. No.
No.
I don't think so at all. Regarding the time of death. And he said poo-poo to the lack of reporting on the physical damage the girls had on them. He even went to the media about it. He said that was not rodents.
Good.
Yeah, we like Harry. Yeah. He also said that based on the layer of thin ice that was found on the girls, because remember they were frozen, he basically said, I'm going to try to layman's terms it, because he theorized that because there was a layer of ice that formed on the girls, that they were warm when they hit that spot because some snow would have fallen on them. It melted. Once it melted, it froze. So it wouldn't have turned into ice. It would have just stayed as snow on them if they were cold when they dropped. So he believes that it was actually closer to the 7th that they would have been put there because there was torrential snowfall that happened after that. But he does not believe that they were cold when they were laying to rest. He believes they were alive.
Smart man.
Smart
That theory.
That's what I thought. I also, I genuinely don't know. He also said that both of the girls actually showed signs of sexual assault. Not just one of them, because little Patricia, the 12-year-old, she had been swabbed and they discovered vaginal fluid and semen. So how is that, who did what? If you are a forensic pathologist, you would have been able to do a swab and find fluid and find male sexual fluid.
To me, that's like, did they just test one and go, there we go. Far out,
Again,
Brussels sprout.
Genuinely don't know. He also checked the contents of their stomachs and he found curdled milk, which was not advised in the previous notes from the other three that had a look at her. And it's kind of interesting because she didn't drink milk. She didn't drink milk at home because she didn't like it. She didn't drink milk when she was getting snacks the night that she disappeared. So how does she get curdled milk in there?
That's really weird.
Yep. Anyway, Harry Gloss stood by his statements, but he was told that he had to retract them. They were like, you don't have any proof of what you're saying. Because the other three forensic pathologists kind of would have outranked him in position and in time. And there's 3 of them that are making this statement versus little Harry Gloss, who is like, you're wrong. Anyway, he wouldn't. He stood by exactly what he said. So in February of 1957, they fired him.
Far out.
But it's not all doom and gloom for old Glossy boy.
Mm-hmm.
The sheriff deputizes him.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because he also agreed with the findings. He was like, what you were saying makes more sense than what they're saying.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that doesn't bring the girls back, but...
No.
Like, at least someone who's trying... I'm not saying he's 100% correct or anything like that at all, because I don't know. But he did a better job than those other clowns. There were suspects, as I mentioned earlier, there are 2 that were kind of really targeted. Those 2 and most other notable suspects were Edward Bedwell and William Cole. Edward was the one who confessed to the crime under duress, and he signed the 19-page dossier about what he did, but there are things that didn't add up because he said that he got them drunk and he also gave them hot dogs, but they didn't find alcohol or hot dogs in the bodies. So they're like, well, we know for a fact it wasn't you. His thing was released anyway. I think he still had to pay like a pretty expensive bond to get out.
All right.
Yeah, it was all messed up. William Cole was one of his friends. Well, actually, the other thing about Edward is apparently he did strike a resemblance to Elvis. So he did look similar to him. So that's why they're kind of like, well, it sounds like it may have been you. And his other friend, I think, was a little bit of a naughty boy too. So that's why they're like, it's possibly the 2 of you. There was also Matt Flag and Walter Kranz. I don't have a lot of info on them because I didn't really look into it because there was nothing substantial as to what the claims were. So it wasn't really that interesting. But I can do a part 2 if people want the details regarding like the suspects and that kind of stuff, because there is a full case in that. So I can do that if anyone actually wants it. But if you want it, you got to tell us. Go on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There was one more person that seemed to fit the bill, and he actually called Loretta in May of 1957 to brag about what he had done. And listen, she had received her fair share of hoax callers calling up to say they had done stuff. Some of them may have been doing it because they just thought it was funny. Really cool sense of humor there. Others may have been doing it because they were perverted. But this guy, she would remember forever because he had something very specific to say. So the caller said,
I know something about that little girl that no one else knows. Not even the police. The smallest girl's toes were crossed at the feet.
And he laughed, and then he hung up on her. And it's true, she had deformed toes that I think her little toes bent over inward. It wasn't deformed, but they just they angled inward. And obviously the mother knew that.
That is very creepy.
Yep. And while it can't be confirmed exactly who it was, Charles Leroy Melkist was believed to actually be that person who made the call, and he was also a self-confessed child killer. He had killed a 15-year-old in 1958, and her name was Bonnie Lee Scott. You know the name Bonnie Lee Scott? I don't. You might know it. Maybe you looked at something.
It sounds familiar. Are you sure you haven't had a Bonnie Lee Scott in one of your...
I don't recognize his name, so I don't think I have.
Yeah.
I may have. Bonnie Scott, I don't know. While she had been decapitated, there are other similarities as to how the bodies had been disposed of. So they're like, ooh, you're all right. We won't worry about it. So he was never deposed in the case of the Grimes sisters, unfortunately, which makes things really, really quite frustrating. But one day after Bonnie Lee Scott died, Loretta got a call from the same caller who called in May. And he had another message for her. He said that he had just committed another perfect crime, and then he disconnected the call. Now, Loretta said, I will never forget that man's voice. It was the same man. So he was obviously arrested in conjunction with Bonnie's murder. So if he's the one who killed her, and that's the crime they're talking about, then it's likely that he may have had something to do with the Grimes. He was referred to as a sexual pervert. But yeah, so I guess at the end of the day, we have a bunch of information. We have a bunch of sightings, but we do not have the real facts about what happened to the Grimes sisters. And I guess in saying that, that brings us to the end of today's case.
So still no DNA advances, or, you know what I mean? Like
they wouldn't have kept DNA. 1951. They wouldn't have kept DNA. They wouldn't have kept male sexual fluid.
Yeah, like the swabs or anything.
They
Nothing at all.
They wouldn't have kept anything because they couldn't test it back then. They could test what your blood type was, but they weren't really working with blood type. I know that we've mentioned before that some people are secretors, non-secretors. Some people will have blood that will actually just naturally be in their semen, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just normal that will have their blood type shown there. I don't think they would have known that, maybe, at the time.
Damn.
Maybe they did.
I was hoping it would be one of those ones where they're like, don't know if anything will come of it, but I'm going to save this stuff just to be safe.
You'd hope so. I mean, I don't have the full details again, which is why I suggested that I could do a secondary case on it. But they reopened, well, they didn't officially reopen the case in 2013, but there were private investigators who went through and took a look at a bunch of things, and they feel like they would have figured some stuff out. But again, it's like 1957 versus 2013. There's a lot of time in between and a lot of evidence you don't have.
Far out. What a crazy story. That's so messed up.
Messed up. It's messed up.
Messed up, I know.
It's messed up. I know I can do anything about it. Anyway, on that note, dear mung beans.
Fare thee well.
Ta-ta.
Toodaloo.
Bye. But I also believe that they believe was that you?
I'm sorry.
I thought someone just punched the wall.
Sorry, no. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
My heart.
My heart.
Rose.
I'm so sorry.
Loved Elvis. She had his vinyls and stuff. Don't tell her, but I smashed them all.
It would have been worth a little bit.
They were great as frisbees. As a kid, I didn't know any different. I'm just real.
I am who I am.
I am who I am, and that's all that I am. Did I write it down?
He had a message that I did not write down.
No, I did. I just didn't put it in quotation marks.
Yeah.